A maid had time traveled from ancient times into a billionaire household, but when the billionaire brought home his real daughter, the maid froze in shock. The young woman was actually the reincarnation of the empress she had served 1,000 years ago. Seeing that the woman did not recognize her at all, the maid realized that the empress had not yet regained her past life memories. So when the arrogant adopted daughter deliberately bullied her, the maid did not hesitate for even a second. She immediately punished the adopted daughter and stood up for the woman, because only she knew how kindly the woman had treated her back when she was just a servant girl. Back then, the woman entered the palace at the age of 16, and the maid stayed by her side from that moment on. The maid watched her rise from a low-ranking palace consort all the way to empress, and as her personal servant, the maid was also given an official title and helped her manage the imperial harem for more than 40 years. But on her 60th birthday, she suddenly died without warning. When she opened her eyes again, she had somehow traveled to the modern world and become a maid in the richest man's home. The wealthy daughter she served had a terrible temper and often took her anger out on the servants. The maid had always felt that this rich daughter was rude and spoiled. In her eyes, she was not even worthy of being compared to the empress. Until one day, she overheard the other servants talking and learned that this rich young lady was not the family's biological daughter at all. She was the daughter they had mistakenly raised after a mix-up at birth years ago, and the richest man's real daughter, who had been separated from her family for years, was about to be brought back home. Just then, a cold and elegant girl dragged her luggage into the hall. It turned out that this was the real daughter who had been given to the wrong family at birth years ago. After learning the woman's name, the maid was shocked to discover that not only did she have the same name as the empress she had served in her past life, but she also looked exactly like her. The maid suspected that the woman might truly be the empress's reincarnation. She rushed up excitedly, hugged the woman, and cried, saying that she had missed her terribly. All the servants around them were terrified, afraid that she had offended the woman who had just returned home. But the maid soon realized that the empress in this life had a gentle and weak personality, and no longer had the commanding presence she once possessed in her past life when she ruled over the imperial harem. Since that was the case, in this life, it would be the maid's turn to protect the empress. At that moment, the adopted daughter deliberately walked up to the woman and said in a sarcastic tone that although she was not the biological daughter, she had lived in this family for 20 years, and her status in the family was not something a newly returned outsider could ever match. She even planned to arrange for the woman to live in a dark, damp storage room. The woman did not dare to argue back. The maid could not stand it anymore. She raised her hand and slapped the adopted daughter across the face, then angrily said that the woman was the richest man's biological daughter, while she was only an adopted daughter. An adopted daughter was still half a servant, and was this how a servant spoke to her master? The adopted daughter was just about to lose her temper when the maid taught her another lesson. Everyone was stunned speechless. After all, back in ancient times, the maid had stayed by the empress's side for 40 years. She may not have learned much else, but when it came to teaching people a lesson, her skill had only become more refined. The adopted daughter trembled with anger and said that once her parents returned, she would have the maid kicked out. But the maid did not buy that at all. She scolded her, saying that she was only an adopted daughter, so how dare she act so arrogantly and speak so provocatively in front of the real daughter. Even if she were thrown out of the house, it would be completely justified. The adopted daughter was left speechless by the maid's sharp comeback. The next second, the maid ran straight upstairs and threw everything from the adopted daughter's bedroom down the stairs, because the large bedroom rightfully belonged to the biological daughter. A mere adopted daughter was only worthy of living in the storage room. The adopted daughter was almost driven crazy, feeling as if the richest man's biological daughter had come back to steal her place in the family. The maid respectfully walked up to the woman and said that her room had already been cleaned up, but the woman felt that this was not quite right. The adopted daughter also took the opportunity to step forward and threaten her. However, the maid merely raised her hand slightly, and the adopted daughter was so frightened that she immediately backed away, planning to wait until her parents and younger brother returned so she could complain to them. The maid's actions won the woman's favor, but the woman was worried that once the richest man and his wife returned, she would not be able to protect the maid. However, the maid told her not to worry, because she already had a way to deal with it. Soon, the richest man and his wife returned. The adopted daughter immediately began crying and complaining. Since they still had feelings for the adopted daughter they had raised for 20 years, they comforted her and promised that they would harshly criticize their biological daughter. The adopted daughter put on a pitiful act and said that she could leave, but she just could not bear to part with the younger brother she had grown up with. After hearing this, the younger brother was moved on the spot and immediately went upstairs to settle the score with his real sister. Seeing that the younger brother had fallen for it, the adopted daughter secretly felt pleased. She pretended to be sensible and told the mother that she would go upstairs to persuade him, but in reality, she simply wanted to watch the woman make a fool of herself. Meanwhile, the younger brother threw a bank card at the woman and told her to take the money and get out of his home. The woman had always had a rather gentle and weak personality, so when she saw that her younger brother disliked her, she prepared to leave. The adopted daughter was secretly delighted. As long as this biological daughter left, she would still be the only heir to the richest man's family. At that moment, the maid walked in carrying a plate of fruit and asked with a smile who he had just told to leave. The younger brother said confidently that of course he was talking about this woman who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and he said that he only recognized the adopted daughter as his sister. The smile on the maid's face instantly disappeared. She directly pressed the younger brother against the edge of the table. The younger brother could not understand why a maid would dare to be so bold, and he immediately cursed at her and told her to let him go. The adopted daughter wanted to help, but one look from the maid scared her back. The maid coldly snapped at him, saying that an elder sister was like a mother, so how dare he speak to his real sister like that. She told him to look up and see for himself. He had already scared his sister to tears. Then she ordered him to apologize right away. After seeing how fierce the maid was, the younger brother immediately backed down and apologized. The woman quietly said it was okay. After going downstairs, the younger brother complained to his parents, saying that the woman had instigated the maid to beat his butt until it was swollen. The adopted daughter also stood beside him and fanned the flames, saying that ever since the woman came back, she had thrown the entire household into chaos. So when the woman and the maid had just come downstairs, the richest man blamed her and asked why she was causing trouble as soon as she returned home. Looking at how timid and withdrawn her daughter appeared, the mother could not help comparing her to the adopted daughter. The adopted daughter had been raised by her side since childhood and was elegant and outstanding. By comparison, this biological daughter did indeed look somewhat unpresentable. Seeing that the whole family was blaming the woman, the maid looked at the richest man and his wife and said that no matter how close the adopted daughter was to them, she was still not their blood. The woman, on the other hand, was the daughter the richest man's wife had carried for 10 months and given birth to. She carried both of their hopes. Could they really bear to watch their own biological daughter be bullied by an adopted daughter? These words instantly silenced the richest man and his wife. Then the maid scolded the younger brother for not knowing the difference between family and outsiders, saying that he had completely disgraced the richest man's family. If word of this spread, outsiders would only think that the richest man had failed to raise his son properly. Her words made the two of them fall into deep thought. The younger brother angrily wanted to argue back, but the mother told him to apologize to both the adopted daughter and the woman. However, the maid said there was no rush to apologize. Then she turned around and brought over 2 cups of tea. She said that the most urgent matter now was to let the woman formally return to the family and acknowledge her ancestors, in order to set the family rules right. After that, she handed the tray to the woman and asked her to formally offer tea to her biological parents. Just as the richest man and his wife were about to take the tea from her, the younger brother objected. At that moment, the richest man's father suddenly walked in. He took the ceremony of officially recognizing her as part of the family very seriously and was also very satisfied with the granddaughter standing before him. The maid beside him then performed a formal blessing salute to the old man. The old man froze the moment he saw it, because this gesture was exactly the same as the one his etiquette teacher had taught him when he was young. However, the maid's blessing salute was even more standard than what his teacher had taught back then. He immediately realized that this maid was definitely not simple. Next, the maid continued to oversee the tea ceremony for officially recognizing the woman as part of the family. Since an elder had arrived, the first cup of tea should naturally be served to the elder first. At that moment, the younger brother still tried to stop it. The adopted daughter also put on a pitiful look and asked Grandpa if drinking this cup of tea meant he was going to kick her out of the family. Hearing this, the maid smiled. She walked up to the adopted daughter and said that a mere adopted daughter actually dared to stop the real granddaughter from formally returning to the family right in front of Grandpa. The next second, she angrily scolded the younger brother for having no manners at all, saying that before an elder had even spoken, it was not his place to interrupt. As soon as she finished speaking, the old man picked up the teacup and drank it in one gulp. This also meant that he had officially recognized the woman's identity. Seeing that the maid spoke properly and was utterly loyal to his real granddaughter, the old man decided on the spot to make her the family's etiquette teacher. Not only that, she would also serve as a study companion and follow his grandson and granddaughters to school, keeping their words and actions in check so they would not continue embarrassing the family. This arrangement nearly drove the adopted daughter mad with anger. So the next day, when they went to school, she deliberately threw away the woman's school uniform. Then she pretended to be nice and asked why the woman was not wearing her uniform on her first day at school, because the school would deduct points from anyone who did not wear it. But how would the woman know these rules on her first day at school? The adopted daughter seized the chance to humiliate her, saying that someone like her had no right to attend an elite private school and should crawl back to wherever she came from. Little did she know, the maid was standing not far away and heard everything. She quickly walked forward and shoved the adopted daughter to the ground. Then she grabbed her by the collar and said that students could only enter the school in their uniform and with their school badge. But the adopted daughter had deliberately thrown away the woman's uniform and used such despicable methods to make her embarrass herself. Since that was the case, don't blame me for what happens next.